Go for it.
Hello and welcome to this video where we attempt to explain the meaning of the phrase change isn't painful, resistance to change is painful. Okay, so this has been motivated by the fact that I shared this on Facebook, a little meme or whatever you call it, with change isn't painful, resistance to change is painful. And it got a couple of comments that threw me a little bit because I wasn't quite sure where they were coming from. And I've been thinking about it, and I thought rather than reply individually on Facebook, which isn't something I like to do, to be on there that long, I thought, okay, let's do a video on it. So I started thinking about it, and then I thought, okay, this is my opportunity to explain it to myself, because there is only me creating my reality, and to allow it to be consolidated in the cells of my own body. So it was obviously for my benefit. I realized that, which is why I asked my lovely friend Liz Nagle to join me. Hello, Liz.
Hello, Deborah, and everyone.
So together we are going to attempt to explain and simplify what is meant by the phrase change isn't painful, it's the resistance to change that is painful, which apparently was said by Buddha or whoever. But anyway, it's obviously a quantum truth on some level, so we wanted to explain it. So I'm going to quickly go through the comments that did come up. One person replied to that by saying, should have known it was our fault. So it was our fault or something like that, should have known that. I didn't really understand that at first, but somehow they took some kind of blame from this, like it's our fault by being in resistance. So that's one thing that we're going to look at. And the other person commented, saying that it was new age bullshit, which was quite interesting, and saying that we shouldn't resist world domination by a tyrannical government. So we should resist. Sorry, yes, that we should resist, because they understood that resistance to change is painful, and that maybe they were thinking that the comment is suggesting that we don't resist anything and that we let people just walk all over us, which of course is not the case. So this concept about resistance is an interesting one. Just so that you know, I have got a video on my YouTube channel called What You Resist Persists, which is obviously relevant. So take a look at that. I'll put a link in the description and the video in the end screen. And this also comes back to something that Liz and I have done before, which is about loving what is. So we have a video on my YouTube channel under the section Self-Mastery with Liz Nagle. So if you haven't met Liz before, go back and have a look at the Self-Mastery with Liz Nagle. And the first video that we did together is very much an introduction one to Liz herself. So that will help you get to know her better. But it does have some idea of loving what is. And we do have a video about that as well. So I'll put a link in the description and the video in the end screen on that. So we're looking at resistance from an energy perspective rather than a third dimensional perspective. And if you resist it, it's the opposite of loving it. And it's the opposite of going with the flow. So I'll start with my comments on this, because I know that Liz is going to take it to another level. And well, we'll see where it goes. But if I want to start with just my thoughts on it, and then you'll see where I'm at, and then Liz can take it somewhere else. So what came to me was this the thing that I come back to all the time is that there is only us creating our reality, and we create our reality based on the frequency that we are. So if you're in resistance, you're in contraction, you're in fear, and that's what you're going to create from. Whereas when you love, you're in expansion. So then you think, how can you love something like a tyrannical government? Well, then I came up with the idea. I'm going to read this because when it came to me, I was writing, observing something without reaction is not inviting it in. I'm going to say that again because it's really important. We can observe something without a reaction. So without contraction, without fear, without reaction. That's not inviting it in. Focusing on it with your attention and your consciousness and your emotions, focusing on it is what invites it in. Accepting and surrendering to something does not equal consenting to it. But accepting and loving will alchemize it. Okay, now that makes sense to me, but I don't know whether it makes sense to everybody. But as Liz is an energy alchemist, I'm going to throw that over to her and say, what are your thoughts on this, Liz?
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. You know, there's different levels or different octaves of acceptance and surrender, and it's often misunderstood. You know, we have this notion that if I surrender, that I will be just trodden over, and that I'm losing all of my identity and my personality, and if I just accept what everybody, you know, what I'm told, what I'm told to do, that's what acceptance is. And I suppose on a you know, on a unconscious level, that's what we have come to, that's how we've come to behave. You know, we have an idea that acceptance is giving in, and it isn't. From a higher octave, you know, everything can be played at a lower octave or a higher octave, and from a higher octave, acceptance is just acknowledging the fact that it is there. It exists, you know, and it's good to be clear about that and to know that, and not stick your head in the sand and pretend it's not happening, but actually see it clearly for what it is. Acknowledge our response to it. You know, how does that make me feel? Does that make me feel fearful, or does it make me feel happy and joyful, expanded or contracted? And so when we have a situation that we don't approve of, well, there's the problem, there's the resistance, you know. We're judging things as from our perspective, whether we feel it's right or wrong, or should or shouldn't be. All it is. It is. That's all we're acknowledging. That's all we're accepting. That's all we're surrendering to, is that it is there. It exists. Everything else is just our, what I call, story about it. So it is just, it's either it's a fear coming up about, you know, something like this happened in the past, and it's going to happen again. That's the ego mind is telling us, oh, alarm bells, you're in danger. Or it's our imagination saying, oh my God, this is going to happen, and it's really scary. And so it just all comes back to fear. But yeah. Have I answered that? Or
I think so, but I have questions. So
okay, go ahead.
I know usually you love my questions.
I do.
But well, actually, one thing I would like to ask you to do is to just explain a little bit in a deeper way what you mean when you say octave, because I've got this now, and I guess it's this two duality, it's the polarity, it's the two ends of the same string concept,
Yeah.
but to differing degrees. We've talked in the past about, you know, love and hate. Where does one, it goes into like, dislike, or what have you, and you know, where does it all start, hot and cold, you know, and stuff like that. But I like the way you use octave, because it's kind of, would you agree that it's taking it basically, when you say to another octave, to a higher level of consciousness without
Um,
judgment? You could
yeah,
see, there was judgment going on there.
yes, blah, blah, blah. I'm trying to compute that. Um, I might say that. I need to think about that. Um, yes, I guess it is consciousness, but we're mixing metaphors. Then you know, it's frequency, and um, it's tonal.
And
The
it's
octave.
literal. It's literal as well. It's not a
It's
metaphor when you say
literal. It's
octave, because
yeah,
everything is sound. So it
because
makes sense.
everything is sound. Um, all energy. It's all energy, and sound is energy, and light is energy, and it's all information is energy.
Well, on
Um,
some level, you are taking it to different levels. If you have
different
an
levels.
octave here, and then an octave, then a higher octave, lower octave. I mean, there are some, there's kind of levels going on there, isn't there?
Yeah, it's just it's kind of easier to understand it if you think of it of you know, notes on a piano, and you've got a low C and a high C. Um, it's kind of interesting to see that all the notes in between, it's a spectrum, you know. It's not a, you know, there are the specific notes, but there's every note in between, low C and high C, and high C and low C. And you know, if you, so it is all just a continuance. You can't, there is always something higher and lower. You know, if you pick a point, there's always going to be something lower and always going to be something higher. You know, you can keep going to the east until eventually you're going west. You can keep going north until eventually you're going south. Um, it's cyclical. It's round and round. So if, what I'm saying is, if you pick any point on a string, on the C string, you're going to have a lower sound emitted, you know, to the higher one. But if you keep moving along the string, you'll get to the higher one, and you'll eventually come back around to the lower one, because that's harmonic.
Yeah, and that's why the one of the scales of consciousness, I think it was Abraham Hicks issued it. It does show like this cone shape, doesn't it? Spiral, like this, because it does, it goes round and round. But I still bring it back to levels of consciousness, which I don't think is a problem talking about it, as long as you
No,
don't have judgment about it. You
yeah,
know, I mean, it can also be objective and factual and what have you. The only negative thing, of course, is like Shakespeare said, there is no good and bad, there's only your thinking that makes it so. So if you can talk about levels of consciousness without
yes,
judging that one is better or worse than the other, then it's a good way to communicate about it. But talking about those levels of consciousness and going back to the tyrannical government, um, I think the bit that some people might be struggling with is the ability to see the blessing in everything. And I think a lot of people have realized that the last 2 years have brought blessings. And that without the last 2 years, and without the perceived negative things to do with the last 2 years, there's a lot of spiritual growth that wouldn't have happened. I mean, I know that's the case with a lot of people I work with. So seeing the blessing in things is really important. So if we were going to talk about tyrannical governments and world domination, seeing the blessing in it is waking people up to something else, to the need to change. And it's because people are stuck in their comfort zone and not realizing that change is the only constant kind of thing. And this is what the whole point of this, right? Change is not the change that's painful, it's the resistance to change. And the things going on in the world are waking people up. And I've always said this, that there's 2 steps to this great awakening. Okay, what is your meaning? What is your definition of the great awakening? So for me, there's the first step is waking up to the reality of what's going on in your physical experience. Okay, now if you wake up to the reality of what's going on in your physical experience and that's unpleasant for you, then that's just going to create fear. So it's so important to understand that the Great Awakening is also about waking up to your own sovereignty, waking up to your own ability as an energy being to actually, and I like the word manipulate. I know it's got a negative connotation, but Dolores Cannon uses the word manipulate. But as alchemists, you can use the word alchemy, of course. As alchemists, you know, we're here to understand that we're energy beings and we can use that energy, manipulate that energy, alchemize that energy, whatever word you want to use, into creating a reality that we prefer. Because the other thing that came to me when you were talking is that when talking about a tyrannical government, everything exists. In a quantum world, in the quantum world, everything already exists. So tyrannical world governments exist, as do a lot of other horrible things. It all exists already. Everything is in the now moment and everything exists already. And also that beautiful community that you dream about, that beautiful job that you dream about, that beautiful soulmate that you dream about, all these things that you dream about also already exist. But you only get to experience that which you resonate with. And by putting your attention and your focus on tyrannical governments and other unpleasant things, you are entangling your energy with that. And you're lowering your frequency to the frequency of that. And the fear that you're creating is going to create more of that. I think it's really important that people understand that. So when people say, oh, they're all love and light and fluffy, you know, by focusing on love and focusing on seeing those things that exist, because everything exists in your mind's eye, everything exists. We can put our focus on that and visualize it. It exists. We can put our focus on a beautiful community dancing around a fire built on love and harmony. You know, we can put our focus on that, and that also exists. But we're only going to experience that which we resonate with. And so by focusing on this and filling with love, we're going to bring that into our reality. I think that's a really important point. And that way we can see the tyrannical governments as being a blessing, because they're waking people up to the fact that there needs to be another way. And that way is the journey within, and that is the power within. That is your own sovereignty.
Yes. Although I do think a lot of people would find that hard to accept and surrender to.
Which bit is difficult, and can we explain it better?
That the tyrannical government is a blessing, okay, or the bad things that happen are a blessing. Can
you expand on that?
Sort of. So I'm not sure I would use the word it's a blessing. I think it's more I accept that it exists and that the darkness, whatever it is, exists. Just as much as the light. So, and it's all part of the one, you know. It's back to there is only me. So because my perception creates my reality. So if I'm seeing a lot of darkness in my reality, then that is being projected outwards from me. And the more fear and stories and attachment I have to that darkness, the more that means that I am resonating with it. I am repeating what you said. It's just I'm using different language. So you know, I think this last couple of years, like when all the lockdowns and everything started, I was full of fear of the darkness, full of it, and going down these really dark rabbit holes, finding out about even more scary stuff, you know, and filling myself with fear, and getting really attached to those stories and bringing them into my reality. I mean, I was kind of lucky that usually I was able to shake it off with at least within a day or two, although then it might come back and I'd have to release another layer and, you know, release another layer. But now I can look at that darkness and see, it just is, you know, it just is.
And it
Doesn't
was
mean
part of me.
it was part
It
of me.
is part of
It
me.
is
But
part of
I
me,
just
but
wanted,
now
yeah, sorry, I was going to
yeah.
intervene just because I think it's a really important point that you're making here, because some people are still down that rabbit hole. And of course, we were together during that time, not physically in lockdown, but we were together during that time online. And you were far more sensible than me. Do you remember that? Because I went down the rabbit hole, and without realizing, I did pick up some dark energies, which is going to happen if you put your consciousness on it with the emotion. You're going to bring it into your reality, and you may not be conscious of that. People, that's the way the world works, and people are very rarely conscious of it. And you said to me something about that I'd picked something up, and I was in denial at first. My first reaction was to be in denial. But then in reflection, I could feel that there was something wrong. I wasn't thinking quite the same way as I used to. I certainly wasn't at peace the same way that I usually am. That you came in and helped me release that. I mean, obviously, once I've acknowledged it, you know, removing dark energy, that's what it's all about. I mean, you know, I know it's a plug for us because we're energy healers, but it isn't. It's this, you know, you don't have to go to someone else to do it, but it does
Not
help.
removing, but releasing our attachment to it, I guess.
Yes.
Releasing
Or
its
observing
attachment.
it, identifying it, alchemizing it is the word, of
Alchemizing
course. But you were very sensible, I remember at the time, because you would watch or learn, research, and learn about what was going on in little bite-sized chunks, whereby you could then process it. And yeah, well, it was, wasn't it? Whereas I was kind of filling my boots with it. And but I think it's important that we share that, because I think that's an important part of the journey. Not ignoring the dark. The darkness is within us.
But can I just come back, because I can hear somebody saying, see, there we're back to blaming ourselves again, you know, because if the darkness is in me, then I'm blaming me, no?
Right. So then you don't have to blame yourself, because that's judgment. But
Yeah,
we can take
that's another
responsibility.
story. We can take
Responsibility.
responsibility.
Well, there
Choose
is only you.
choose how we respond. We have an ability to respond. That's my responsibility. I can choose how I am going to respond
So you're
to
far more compassionate. This is your
situations.
divine compassion coming out, because you're far more compassionate about how people are going to feel about this.
But I'm also more compassionate to myself. I'm not going
Yes,
to take the blame
I
off.
get that, but mine's more dominant divine truth, and I'm like, well, this is the way it is. So there is only you. You are creating your own reality in every moment. You always have, you always will. So yes, take responsibility for that. If you want to use the word blame, use the word blame. But isn't it nicer for yourself, like you say? Isn't it more compassionate for yourself not to have that judgment on yourself? Release the judgment on yourself, and then you can understand, you can take responsibility. Because the thing is, though, we're not going to get to this heaven on earth if we are judging ourselves and not taking responsibility for ourselves. It is
Yeah,
about stepping into our own sovereignty.
it is, because if we're blaming somebody else, or a tyrannical government or whatever, if we're placing blame outside of ourselves, then we're a victim, and then we've got no control.
Yeah.
We've no power. If we're blaming ourselves, we're a victim of ourselves. You know, so when we can have compassion for ourselves, then we can have compassion out there and let go of the fear and stop giving them power over us. Stop giving our power away. You know, what
And
is it
we give
Sara
our power
Landon
away
says?
by focusing.
Nothing is worth our heaven on earth. Yeah. I mean, I wanted to go into something else, but do you have anything else to say on that?
No, go ahead. Take it to wherever you're going.
Okay, just tell me to shut up, or ask me a question whenever you need.
I can't imagine that happening, but go on.
I'm giving you permission to interrupt me, Deborah. Okay, so when you told me that the subject for this conversation, I just made a few notes. And you know, what is our main issue with change? And you've brought it up. It's fear. You know, it's fear of the unknown. And even if it's a change for the better, and we know it's a change for the better, we're still fearful, because the devil we know is better than what we don't know, because our imagination is wonderful at creating monsters. You know, what do they call it in a movie? They call it a MacGuffin, when they create an illusion of something terrible, but they don't actually give you the full image of it, because they know that they can never actually show you something that is going to be as terrifying or as wonderful as your imagination.
Can you say that again? Because I think that's a really important point.
A thing called a MacGuffin in a film. You see it in older movies where, you know, they talk about something in a suitcase, for instance, and this magnificent piece of artwork, which they never fully explain, never fully describe, and they never actually show you the thing, the item. And at the end of the movie, they'll open the suitcase, and you'll just see the glow, a golden glow on everybody's face as they're staring in, and this, like, wow, you know, but they never show you the thing, because they leave it up to your imagination to imagine.
On both ends of the scale, the fear
more,
and the wow and the
that's
wonder.
the good one. It's the same in horror movies. They never, well, they use them to show you the monster, because, you know, you just see him in shadows, and it would be enlarged, and it would be, you know, very scary. It's the shadow, gives you, spikes your imagination, or sparks your imagination to come up with something really terrifying, much more so than the art department or makeup department or anybody can, or CGI department can come up with.
It's a bit like the Wizard of Oz, isn't it? Isn't that
yeah.
what happened with the Wizard of Oz? Yeah.
Yeah, sort of.
Which is quite topical. But anyway, not for this video.
Anyway, that's the MacGuffin. So our imaginations are amazing at coming up with really scary, usually scary scenarios that, you know, are not actually probable or real. They're certainly not real in the moment. And so this is, you know, about coming back into the moment, really. Yeah, so our fear is of the unknown. And so how do we, yeah, so my next point was the pun, loose change. So we talk about change, but we also have loose change in our pocket, which is the little bits, the little coins. So this is how we build our resilience to change, is by taking it in bite-sized pieces. You know, making little changes more often rather than waiting until we're, you know, our nose is right up against the door, or we're standing on the edge of the cliff and have to jump. We should be constantly being aware of where we need, you know, what's my heart telling me? What's my body telling me? I need to make a little change here. I need to make, you know, it's like losing a kilo before you've got 5 to lose. You know, it's the stitch in time saves 9. Make small changes regularly and often.
Yeah,
rather than
it's a little bit of
waiting.
prevention is better than cure, but just
Yeah.
that kind of just work on your frequency. That's what I want to say, and that's what I was saying with book number 1. You know, work on your frequency all the time, even if you don't think you need to, even if there's nothing wrong.
Yeah.
And for anyone that doesn't know the first book, Heal Yourself to Happiness, it's available free from my website at deborahjanesutton.com, link in the description. But yes, it doesn't matter where you're at, because if you, it's like what they say, if you listen to your body when it talks to you, you won't have it scream at you. So I think the changes that we're talking about, but because of what's going on in the world, these changes are coming up thick and fast. And if you don't make, as you say, if you don't take those little leaps of faith, you are going to end up with it like this, and I'm having to make a massive leap of faith. But I just want to jump in there, because a lot of people listening to this will have had their soul profiles done, and some soul groups of origin, I think it's particularly the Polarians, are not good with change. And so when they do typically wait till it's in their face, and then jump. That just came to me when you said that. But yes, I think generally speaking, yes, it's that constant, can I make a change for the better? When you understand that you're an energy being, and when you understand that your reality is a reflection of the energy that you are, you know that your reality is going to improve in some way or another, by you raising your frequency, whether that be health, happiness, love, relationship, job, career, finances, money, abundance, whatever. It doesn't matter, does it? So yeah, I think that's a really important point as well.
Yeah, and I think that helps to build resilience, you know, and that ability to be more flexible and trust, because that's really what it comes down to. Do I trust myself? Do I trust, you can say the universe, does the universe have my back? But some people can't go that far. Do I trust God? Whatever it is. But can I trust myself that my instincts are correct? You know, and when you make little changes and are more in the moment, and yeah, coming always back into alignment in the moment, that will help you just to see things more clearly. Actually, I'm all right at this moment in time, you know, that sort of a way.
Can I just interrupt there a little bit, just
Yeah.
to help anyone that is watching that's thinking it's easier said than done to trust yourself? I know it sounds like I've kind of got a video for every occasion, but I have, because actually in my reprogramming your subconscious mind video, and I will put a link in the description. I'll put a video in the end screen if I haven't filled up the end screen already, because the belief that I actually use in that video is I trust myself completely, and it's powerful, and that's why I'm using it in that video. And in the description of that video, there's 80 beliefs that you can go down to install, and it's brain integration activities that help you install these positive beliefs into your subconscious. And because the one in the video is actually about trusting, there might be someone listening going, well, how do I trust myself? You know,
Well,
and
okay, so I was listening to Robert E. Grant, a TED talk that he did a number of years ago, I think. And he says the antidote to fear is gratitude. And, you know, when we make a switch to remembering all that we're grateful for, we can, it just helps us to remember that we can trust ourselves, we can trust the universe, we can trust that everything happens for us. It usually works out in the end for the better. Usually when we have hindsight, it doesn't feel like it at the time, and it might take years. But actually, when we think back to the horrible thing that happened, it has usually, if we've managed to heal it, had a positive, or at least had a positive potential, even if we didn't take it up. It had a positive potential. So yeah, so going back over what we're grateful for in our lives at this moment, even if it's just I'm here and I'm breathing, so I actually survived all of that, whatever I went through, and I'm here now. That's something to be grateful for, and that can help to build your trust little by little by little. Loose change. Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, sorry, anything else?
okay, the only other thing that came to me while you were talking was when we were talking about raising your frequency, whether you think you need to or not, just constantly raising your frequency. And I think it's your only defense. I think if you're going to talk about, if we're going to defense and attack, I mean, these are low consciousness words, but we're talking about tyrannical governments. So we are talking about low frequency. And if you wanted to talk about, you know, how do you defend yourself? You know, your level of consciousness is your defense. And it's something that came to me at the very beginning of this 2-year, you know, whatever. And I haven't really shared it much because it sounds so harsh, but then I'm divine truth, so I'm just going to say it anyway. But your salvation, I was going to use the word salvation, your salvation lies in your level of consciousness. And if you want to know how to raise your level of consciousness, it starts by raising your frequency. It's as simple as that.
It is as simple as that. But okay, just to put it in certain from a different perspective.
Mm-hmm.
That sounds like work. You know, I've got to do something.
But it's kind of fun because what we said about, you just said about
Well,
gratitude is actually chapter 2 of book 1 about raising your frequency. So
yeah, but really, we don't have to raise our frequency. We already are high frequency beings. You know, we don't have to find peace. We already have peace within us. We don't have to work for any of it. We just have to allow it. And the way to do that, I have a lovely quote here from Damo Mitchell. We should give our trust to our unfolding path in life, which presents itself to us once we learned how to let go. This is both the simplest and most difficult of principles. The nature of Tao is to flow and let life unfold in a harmonious manner. Those who can tap into this flow will be led towards a state of conscious elevation. Those who cannot will generally be led down a path of trivial concerns.
And that is so relevant to is resistance. It's the opposite. The opposite of resistance is going with the flow.
Yeah. It
and
is.
allowing.
And allowing. And
but
we
not
can only allow when we
consenting to.
trust.
Sorry.
We can only allow when we trust. And it's that trust. And how do we get to that point? It's by letting go. I mean, ego mind's job is to warn us about unperceived, unperceived, is that the right word? Is that a word? Danger, unperceived danger. That's ego's job. There might be a boogeyman in the dark corner over there. So, but rather than just cowering in fear of what might be, we need to just actually take that thought into our rational mind and assess the situation. Is it real in our actual experience? And then decide whether it's appropriate to run and hide or actually just go around the corner and see, turn on the light, you know? So that's ego's job, is to bring things up from the past, whether they're our actual experiences or a movie, you know, the scary movie we saw, or anything else, something we heard. You know, it'll just go, danger, danger, danger. That's its job, is to alert us to danger. But if we can drop into our heart mind, because our heart has, you know, the neurons, brain neurons, similar neurons to that are in our brain, in our heart. So it does have a thinking capacity, or
Definitely.
And so if we can drop, and the, you know, a tool for doing that is to drop into, what am I grateful for? You know, that's just a tool. We can use that. We can use anything to help us drop into the heart, but gratitude is a really good one. So by nurturing gratitude, it helps us to create that balance that brings us into the present moment, that brings us into alignment, and helps us to choose then our response to the change, you know, in a more rational way, or a more instinctive way, maybe. And our imaginations get carried away with our fears for the future. So it's all about just coming into the moment. Where am I? Woman, sitting in chair, breathing. I might be afraid of something that's in the dark corner over there, but actually right here, right now, I'm fine. Nothing's attacking me. I don't need to defend myself. I am without stories about what might have happened in the past and what could happen in the future. Right here, right now, actually, I'm okay. And that's always, always, always the case, because other than that, you're dead.
Yeah. But I'm just thinking of a question that somebody might have, because you talked about the bogeyman in the corner, and you talked about your imagination making him bigger than he is, and you talked about the ego, you know, being prepared to run, obviously, with fear. But what about the ego that fights him? The ego that wants to fight him?
Oh yeah, okay.
That reminds me of the Star Wars scene where he finally got Darth Vader. Luke Skywalker finally got Darth Vader when he cut his head off and it rolled over, and then he saw it was his own face. So it is a case of that darkness being yourself. But no, on the level that people are talking about, but I'm fighting. I want to fight that monster, that darkness, that cause whatever's causing the fear.
Fight or flight. So it's still fear. It's still the same emotion. Still the same response.
They might think there's not time to sit and be because it's happening now. I have to fight now.
But if you sit and be,
and take a breath. I was going to say that myself. Take a breath. There's
Take
that
a
famous
breath,
quote
always.
by a yogi. I can't remember his name, but he says, there is nothing in life that can't be improved by taking a breath.
I'm not saying that when you're in the middle of something that you will be able to do this. I mean, that's pure, true enlightenment. I mean, there's how many of us really are going to be able to be there? However, we do what our instincts tell us. And, if we are in fear, we're not going to have the capacity to do any of this thinking or sitting and waiting or breathing, or, we'll just be in adrenaline mode of fight or flight. And that, that's not to be frowned on either, or judged to be insufficient. It's perfect. It's a perfectly natural response. However, in hindsight, when you do calm down, or if it's not, the problem with most of us is we're very rarely in those really life-threatening situations. Mostly we're sitting on our couch when all of this, or we're lying in our bed and it's dark, in the middle of the night, and we have all these worries and anxieties. Mostly they're our imagination. There are in our memory or imagination, which is past and future. But if we can, at that point, and even then, anxiety can take over and put you into fight or flight. And again, not to be dismissed. But when eventually you can breathe and the fear kind of pans out a little bit, and you can take that breath and you can be a little bit more rational, then you can maybe get through to yourself, right here, right now, everything is fine. Right here, right now, the peace is in there. The peace is there. It's here. It's in me. It's not something I have to achieve. I am already it. And from there, then you can take a rational decision about how you're going to respond to your situation.
And it's a good example, I think, of, you can't change the past. It's going to change your future, because, and it brings us back to prevention is better than cure. Take the opportunity. So the danger has gone. Okay, you're not in danger. You said you're sitting on your couch. You choose what you watch and what you listen to. All right, yes, you're going to have maybe this anxiety come up. But in those times when you have a choice about what to look at, where to put your consciousness, where to put your attention, it's 100% about putting your attention on something that's going to bring you into the now, bring you into that peace space, that heart space. That's when meditation changes lives. And that's why, yoga changes lives, qigong changes lives.
Even if you're not going to go that far, but just rather than watch the news about something that's filling you full of fear, or
even the alternative news,
which actually is a lot scarier a lot of the time, so without listening to any news, without looking at anything, just watch stuff that makes you feel good, listen to nice music, just do something else to make you feel that your space around you is a nice place to be.
Definitely. And this actually comes up in the cards this week, messages for this week, which I can also put in the description, because it was about doing something different, doing something new. I mean, I was talking about dancing, learn a new dance was what I was saying, but it doesn't dance. Just take your attention and your physical body, because it was about shaking up the physical body, shaking up the emotional body, shaking up your mental body, shaking up your spiritual body. And so physically shaking yourself up whilst putting your consciousness on something fun and something new. That was the crucial thing. And what also came through was, you might think it's trivial to learn a new dance, but if everybody did that, it would raise the frequency of the collective at something as simple as that. So I think it is about that. And one thing I do want to ask you, I'm not sure how long we've been on, but I think we might need to bring it to a close at some stage. But you gave a quote saying, give our trust to, and you said it was by someone called, was it Damien? Well, I'd love it if you could read that again.
Damo Mitchell. He's
Damo Mitchell.
Yeah.
Can you repeat it?
Sure. The whole thing? We should give our trust to our unfolding path in life, which presents itself to us once we learn how to let go. I'm interjecting here. Once we let go of our memory and our imagination, not our imagination, but our anxiety, our fear.
Our emotions, our limiting beliefs, and our judgment, I want to say.
Thank you. Okay, so yeah, the path presents itself to us once we learn how to let go. This is both the simplest and most difficult of principles. So don't beat yourself up, be compassionate. When you learn to be compassionate to yourself, you can be more compassionate to others, and you can be more understanding and forgiving.
And it brings us back to the Byron Katie, doesn't it? So if you have been watching something news that is triggering you and creating fear, and your ego is saying to you, you know, but it's true, we have to know this. Byron Katie would say to you,
I have to fight this, we have to.
Yeah. We have to fight this. Byron Katie would just say to you, but is it true? Because we know that everything exists. The question you need to ask yourself isn't how true it is, it's how true for you do you want it to be? Because if you want to go and resonate with it, feel your boots resonating with it, it will be true for you. And it's not true for those that choose to resonate through love or gratitude, or in the higher octave, or
this is the work, you know. Byron Katie's thework.com if you want to find out more about her. But you know, this is my work, you know. I'm letting go of these scary scenarios that I have believed in, you know, but I'm choosing not to believe anymore.
Well, I'm choosing not to resonate with it, because when you fill up with love, and you focus on what brings you love, like, you know, community gatherings and dancing and, you know, whatever it is that makes you feel good, in nature with animals and what have you, then that is the frequency we're going to be creating from. So as a collective, we need to do that all together so that we can create that heaven on earth as a collective as well. But I just want to say, I want to end with this one thing, because it's something that you said. Oh, we have two things to end with. Go on.
Sorry. I just have another quote, but this one is from Jason Gregory. They're both Taoists, and I'm just reading at the moment. So it's just about trust. So Jason says, even though to trust yourself and life is the only sane way to experience this world, most of us do not understand the practicality of this way of being and its value for true freedom.
I love that. I love the fact, the practicality, and because we keep talking about it like it's easy, but it's practical. It just makes sense to me. It's so logical that if you just raise your frequency in any shape or form in all areas, you know, so, you know, this could be through crystals, through doing what you love, through physical activity, through nature.
It can be so long to freaking get this.
It's like you said, it's the most simple but the most difficult in the same principle. But the thing I wanted to say, which sounded relevant, because we talked about the work. This is the work of Byron Katie, and I'll put a link into her website as well. And of course, my work, if you call it that, is all revolved around, releasing emotions and limiting beliefs. But actually, I saw Sara Landon, and Sara Landon channels the council. I'll put a link into her work as well, because I highly recommend her work. And I saw her interviewed by somebody, and the person interviewing her, I think it was Mike Dooley at the time, said something about, oh, but this is the work, we have this inner work that we have to do. And while channeling, so she was in channel, so this is the council that came through, said quite matter of factly, you've never heard that from us. And that really threw me, because I've been such a big fan of Sara Landon and the council, and it's all so much a part of what we talk about, doing the work, the inner work. And they said emphatically, you've never heard that from us about doing the inner work. And they said, because it's what we talked before about being a mystic. If you're an energy healer, you heal people. If you're a master, you help people heal themselves, which resonates with me because of the wording in my own marketing. But if you're a mystic, you help people see that there was never anything wrong with them, or their reality, or the collective, or the universe, and that's what I've before talked about, you being a mystic, because you talk on that level. And obviously the council are there as well, because they will always remind you that you're already divine love, you're already divine peace. You don't have to put the love in, you don't have to put the peace in. You are naturally love and peace and joy and harmony and acceptance and all those beautiful things. It's a case of taking what doesn't serve you out, the blocks to your peace and love out. Yeah.
The curtains, the veils, just lifting them all off, one layer at a time, or in a bunch of layers at a time. The more the merrier. Get them out. And I do smile when you call me a mystic, but because I have I've studied this stuff. I read it. I on an intellectual level know it, but it's still pennies, loose change, dropping, bit at a time, a bit at a time.
Yeah, and it's the same for me, as you know. But we're talking to people. We started this video about people that had commented on this, change is not painful, resistance to change is painful. And people had commented on that who were clearly seeing things from a different perspective. And we want to kind of reach people that are at, have different perceptions of life. If their perception includes any suffering whatsoever, then we kind of want to come in and help them shift that to release the suffering, I guess. But understanding that we are the love, we are the peace. I would like to just end with my comments on it's an affirmation from Sara Landon, actually. I activate my light and allow all that I am. I activate my light because I am the light. I allow all that I am. And just understand, when you say that affirmation, that you're allowing the light of God. You're allowing the light of consciousness, pure consciousness. You are the light of God, and you are the light of pure consciousness. And so when you activate your light and you allow all of that, it really does help expand you, every cell of your body, and expand you into more of who you are. And that brings you into the mystic octave.
Beautiful. I also want to say, though, allowing all that I am includes some darkness, includes half yin yang, the yin yang,
Yes, but no suffering. But no suffering.
No.
That's the point. We've just hit on a really important point. Maybe this needs to be the topic for the next one. Is how do we see the darkness, accept the darkness, understand the darkness? It's the suffering that we want to release, not the darkness.
Well, that's the video we just did. We're not resisting the pain, the change.
Oh, go back to the beginning and watch it again then. Right. Wow. Anything else you want to say or share, lovely, before we say goodbye?
No, I think that's it. Thank you. Thank you very much. I really enjoy these conversations.
Yeah, me too. I always learn something. It's really exciting. I've got pages of notes already, and I'm going to get that quote written down properly as well. So thank you so much, Liz, for joining me on this and for helping me on my path. You do so much in that direction. And
Oh,
thank you for coming back to my YouTube channel. And I'm sure it won't be the last time.
thank
So
you.
lots of love to you, Liz, and lots of love to everybody that's watching. I'm getting all emotional now because I'm all full of divine love. I am divine love, and it's flowing. And so I want to tell everybody how much I love you. So see you in the next video. Bye for now.